Behold, new video just dropped, and today I am covering a video from PragerU. Now, I'm sure most of you probably know who PragerU is, or who it is, what PragerU is, and who Dennis Prager is. And if you don't know, then let me tell you. PragerU is a conservative religious media outlet. Now, PragerU has made a lot of really bad content over the years, especially stuff related to the LGBTQ and politics. Now, of course, they also talk about religion, but that's not really the main focus for them. But either way, I think that now is a very good time to start responding to them. And this isn't new, a lot of response videos have been done to PragerU, but let me explain to you why I feel it's necessary that PragerU gets its own series. On May 1st, 2025, Donald Trump signed an executive order cutting funding to NPR, that's the National Public Radio, and PBS, the Public Broadcasting Service. The Trump administration, of course, argues that it's because they're too biased, and the government just can't be funding biased media. That would be awful. Sure, of course it would be awful. No contention here. Now, of course, there's no argument from me that if a media outlet is biased, it probably shouldn't be funded by the government. However, that's only the first half of the story. While cutting funding to those organizations who, by the way, at this point in time, they've already had to cut jobs to even keep the doors open. And because of that loss of funding, a void was created that kind of needed to be filled. And from the looks of it, PragerU seems to be filling that void. Although I should be clear, they're not technically replacing PBS or NPR, they're not doing the same role at all. So it's misrepresented by a lot of left-leaning outlets that they are replacing it. However, PragerU did team up with the White House to create the Founders Museum, where they definitely won't be giving you any whitewashed propagandistic view of early American history. Definitely none of that happening.
We now are excited to launch today the Founders Museum, 56 signers of the Declaration, 20 key events of the American Revolution, and 6 ladies of the Revolution. And PragerU has been working diligently on creating videos, and when you use that QR code, you get to view the amazing pictures come to life telling their own stories.
Funnily enough, this announcement was actually given by Linda McMahon, the Rose West to Vince McMahon's Fred.
Real patriotic education means that just as our founders loved and honored America, so we should honor them, while deeply learning and earnestly debating still their ideas. That's what this Founders Museum is intended to do.
While the full extent of this partnership isn't clear, PragerU really does seem like a shoo-in for the role. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know how it's all going to happen. I don't know for a fact that PragerU is going to start writing textbooks or doing anything like PBS or NPR or anything of the sort. I have absolutely no evidence that such a thing is going to happen. But what we do have evidence of is at least some teamwork between PragerU and this current administration. I'm also going to read to you this very worrying and real tweet. This comes from the State Department that says the Trump administration will eradicate practices that devalue and demean the Christian faith. Now again, I don't know if PragerU is going to be involved in this in any way. No evidence of such a partnership. But considering the recent attacks by the Trump administration on museums and universities, there's quite a lot to worry about. Now again, there have been many videos made about PragerU and all of their misunderstandings. Plenty of content has been made about their weird views on science or social issues or politics. There is a slew of content like that. However, I want to concentrate on specifically the Bible, and particularly their misrepresentations of it. So Dennis Prager, he is of course not a Christian, he is Jewish. But that doesn't stop him from brazenly misunderstanding the Bible, even the Hebrew parts of it. And the video we're looking at today is about Layla and Leo, brother and sister, I think, meeting a great leader named Moses. The video starts off with Layla having a lot of work to do. Leo, like the good middle manager he is, tells Layla to delegate some of these tasks out to get the job done sooner. Of course, she's confident that she needs to do it all herself to make sure it's done right. But Leo points out that even the best leaders needed help. So what do? They take out their phone and hop into an app, actually, but the app takes them back in time to talk to one of the greatest leaders of all time, Moses.
Well, hello, children. Why are you up here all alone and not with the rest of the Hebrews in the Promised Land?
You know, I have been looking at this video and the script for a while, and I still, for the life of me, cannot understand why the plot is set up like this. Moses was not alive when they entered the Promised Land. Moses dies in Deuteronomy 34. Plans to even enter the Promised Land only pop up in Joshua. So why is it that in this video we have Moses asking Layla and Leo why they're not in the Promised Land with the rest of the Hebrews? Moses, you were not alive when this happened. You were dead before plans to enter the Promised Land even started. This kind of reading comprehension can really only be matched by a misreading of Donald Trump's 9-0 Supreme Court ruling against him. Then they go over the basics of the Moses story. Baby in the Nile, killing an Egyptian, running away, all that basic stuff. Really no complaints up until this next point.
No way. How did you know it was God?
Well, 1, he was a talking flame in the bush that didn't burn. And 2, he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
That's pretty clear.
Now, it is of course true that in the Exodus narrative, Moses does speak to God in the burning bush. But it's not exactly that clear. And here's what I mean by that. And I get that this video is for kids, so they're probably not going to get into the nitty-gritty, but I feel like it's actually really important and theologically very interesting, at least to me, so I'm going to choose to include it. So God is speaking to Moses in the burning bush. Kind of. What it actually says is that the angel of the Lord first appeared to him, and then as this narrative continues, it just changes to him speaking to God directly instead of the angel of the Lord. Now this may seem weird on the face of it, and it is, but it should be noted that at this point in time, at least the time that the story was written in, so I'm going to say like 6th to 5th centuries BCE, at this point in time, angels and God were not exactly separate. It wasn't God just creating angels. Angels, or messengers, are essentially an extension of God. They are one of God's ways in which he can interact with reality. Now eventually, of course, they get to the main point of the video. While God, the most powerful being in existence, could do things himself, he enlists the help of Moses. The argument is that if God tells you to do something you can easily do, you're more likely to attribute it to yourself. But if he tells you to do something you can't do, then you would attribute your success to God and sing his praises. According to the writers of this video, this is meant to explain Moses' initial unwillingness to take up this role. But it doesn't actually say that anywhere in the text explicitly. Instead, they're just kind of pulling it out of Balaam's ass. That means donkey in this context, so I don't have to censor anything.
But what I still don't understand is why God would choose you if you couldn't do it on your own.
That's a really good question, Layla. Over my long life, I've learned that God usually doesn't call us to do things within our abilities, since we are more likely to take the credit ourselves instead of giving the credit to him.
Yeah, I've heard the expression, give credit where credit is due. And God does deserve all the credit.
Layla here is actually right. God does deserve all the credit. But if that's the case, what's Moses actually doing? Moses, in this video, acknowledges that he received help from God the whole time. But it wasn't just help. He was just doing everything. Even in Exodus 3, God says, "I have come down to deliver them from the Egyptians, and that I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt." So throughout this entire narrative, God's the one doing all the work. He's doing all the heavy lifting. Moses is the one that needed the help. So, if the framing of this video is that Moses asked for help, so Layla should too, instead of if God asked for help, then Layla should too, then it would be a horrible example because God is the one doing everything. Then they start listing off all the plagues that God sent on the Egyptians. Again, an example of God doing all the work.
What plagues?
God sent all sorts of punishment to the Egyptians to convince the Pharaoh to free the Hebrews.
Again, God is the one doing everything. But it's worth noting that at least sometimes God is acting as a hindrance to his own stated goal. If he wants these plagues to convince the Pharaoh to let his people go, then those times that he is actively hardening Pharaoh's heart himself really stand against that goal. I really like this comment that William H.C. Propp makes in his commentary on Exodus. Keep in mind, this comes after a long section where he considers the ramifications of God's actions here. The situation really differs little from what we find in Homeric epic. The gods breathe cowardice or courage into mortals who are already brave or fearful. They punish humans for sins that ultimately should be blamed upon the gods themselves.
At least you could finally relax, though, once you were all there.
Not exactly. Our journey was much longer than expected. 40 years to be exact.
40 years?
Yeah, 40 years isn't literal, by the way. 40 is a typological number. So essentially, every single time that they're using 40 in a story like this, it just means a long time. That's why Moses is on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. The rain waters last 40 days and 40 nights. The Philistines rule over the people for 40 years, etc.
Most people are happy to help out.
Yeah, you're right. I love helping people.
So did the Hebrews. I found this out after trying to do everything on my own. Thankfully, my mindset changed when my very wise father-in-law told me not to sit alone, that I should delegate my tasks so that my people and I would be happier.
Whoa, lighting change. I had to stop the recording because, well, the camera died, so I had to stop the recording. So I'm going to go ahead and hop back into this video. It is, of course, true that Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, does give him advice in Exodus 18. And in this advice, he tells Moses not to work so hard, to stop doing everything himself. It is true that he says that, but this message is taken severely out of context. The actual context for the story is a precursor to the giving of the laws. The reason that the laws have to come down is because Moses can't keep mediating between the people and God all day, every day. They need to follow some rules. So the reason Jethro says this is to set up the rules, the laws, coming down to Moses and being given to the people. That way they can mediate amongst themselves. Now, I don't know about you, but I would hardly call this help or assistance or asking for assistance. You are giving someone else the rules. You are not asking for their help.
When the people were desperate for water, God gave me instruction on how to produce it from a rock by speaking to it. I was so full of pride and frustration at the time, though, that I didn't follow his instructions.
You didn't? But that sounds so easy.
I know, but I was mad. So instead of talking to it, I hit the rock twice with Aaron's staff. God had been trying to help us, but I disobeyed him and decided to do it my own way. This is why I wasn't allowed to go into the promised land with everyone else.
Wow, sorry.
So finally, we get to the part of the video where Moses explains why he's not in the land. And he tells us the reason is, of course, the Waters of Meribah episode in Numbers 20. Except Moses here says a very curious and false thing.
God gave me instruction on how to produce it from a rock by speaking to it.
In Numbers 20, verse 8, God tells Moses to take his staff and command the rock to yield its water. Now, of course, this story is a doublet of a similar episode in Exodus, except that one, where Moses gets water from the rock, it goes off without a hitch, and that's in Exodus 17. In that chapter, he does exactly as God says, and the waters come out. In Numbers, he takes his staff, hits the rock twice, and the waters come out, but God is mad at him for it. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about something like source criticism in a video like this, but it should be noted that it's very possible that this is actually an interpolation. I'm not going to die on that hill, but it is possible. And here is at least an argument for it. I mean, think about it this way. If Moses was not supposed to hit the rock with his staff, then why is he told explicitly in verse 8 to take the staff? There would be no purpose in being told to take the staff if you're not going to use it. Now, of course, I'm not going to die on the hill that this is an interpolation, but it should be noted. And furthermore, we get to the greater point of this story. What did Moses do that was so terrible? Now, on the face value of it, upon first reading, you can probably tell, well, God said to command it to yield its water. So you have to speak to it through like a spell or something like that, or any kind of command. Now, he doesn't actually tell you the command or the words you need to speak, which usually you would expect in a text like this. Now, of course, this seems like general disobedience, and in fact, a lot of people do think that. In fact, PragerU even seems to think that. But it should be noted again that this is only one interpretation. There have been other interpretations of this text and the thing that Moses did wrong. Scholars have suggested everything from lack of faith, impatience, anger, a whole bunch of stuff. So really, we're just hypothesizing. And I'm not going to say that PragerU's interpretation is necessarily wrong, but what I am going to say is that there has been debate about this exact topic. The video ends with overall what I would call a good lesson. If you need help, ask for it. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it is a sign of strength. And I agree with that lesson entirely. But I would say that using Moses as an example for this is kind of ridiculous, considering the fact that God does everything. Or you could interpret this video to be like, well, God is actually the leader who asked for help. But later on in the video, Layla does say that she was in fact trying to emulate Moses, so we're gonna go with that interpretation. But again, Moses was not that great of a leader because God was still doing everything. But of course, let's not forget what happened when Moses came down the mountain and saw people worshiping the golden calf. He puts brother against brother. And the Levites end up killing the non-Levites for not believing in God hard enough. Leadership. I think a lot of the problems in this video can probably be attributed to the fact that it was made for children. It's not supposed to be really nuanced. So I hope that the videos that people will send me in the future will be, more geared towards adults, so I can get into the nitty-gritty, because I just know they're going to misrepresent it more in those somehow. I just kind of have that feeling that they're going to do that. So send me whatever, and I will address it if I think I can pull some content out of it. So go ahead, send me videos on Discord, the link of which is in the description. Make sure to like and subscribe. Any kind of engagement really helps the channel, so especially leaving comments, sharing the video, all that stuff, engagement helps us grow. So even if you don't want to watch it, maybe somebody else will, so engage with the video. Please and thank you, and I hope you have the day you deserve.